Our world moves fast, instant meals, same-day deliveries, smart homes powered by a swipe. But what happens when all that collapses? When the app is gone, the power flickers out, and the shelves stand empty. Your gadgets won't save you. But the wisdom your grandmother called just daily life, that will. In the next few minutes, I'm pulling back the curtain on 8 ancient canning secrets, time-tested methods that stored food without freezers, preservatives, or waste. These are not theories. These are survival tools refined through rationing, war, and blackout winters. All you need is a jar, your kitchen, and a little grandmotherly know-how. Hey everyone, great to have you back. I wouldn't interrupt your scroll if it wasn't urgent, but the crossroads we're standing at right now, it's everything. After digging into rising energy crises, global unrest, and real stories of families finding food while stores were empty, I realized it's time we remembered what was almost forgotten. So while most folks scramble for overpriced gear, the wise are mastering tools passed from ancestors who truly needed them. In this video, I'll show you how to turn fresh produce into pantry lifesavers, preserve flavors without fridges, and make meals last years, not weeks. By the end, it's not just about food. You'll recognize where your strength really lies hidden in your family's roots. Before we get started, I've got to ask, did anyone ever show you how to salt a tomato in a jar? Or peel beans for winter? Drop a yes or teach me in the comments, because what I'm about to share may be the most important recipe you use going forward. Number 8. Boil-tested jar seal. You think you've sealed the jar, that click is proof enough. But what your grandmother called the boil test wasn't about sound. It was about finality. In the uncertain world of cupboards and rationing, Grandma never counted on lids, she counted on that test. Because when systems fail and power flickers, sterile labels mean nothing. What matters is whether that jar truly locks the world out. She placed her filled preserve jars into a boiling water bath, not just enough to simmer, but deep, rolling, vigorous boil. She watched the surface ripple as her jars trembled in the heat. That was the moment the seal was happening, glass expanding, contents pushing outward, air escaping. Then, crucially, she'd lift the jars one by one and set them somewhere still enough that you'd hear the quiet, that faint pop. That was the seal being drawn, but she didn't trust the pop alone. After that initial burst of suction, she'd tap the lid. A tweak. If it still moved or sounded hollow, she knew it failed the test. She'd remove it, reheat, recast, repeat. Predictable seal? Not enough. Because that seal was a barrier to bacteria, mold, and worst of all, wasting months of food when nothing else was coming. Here's why that matters now. Modern food supply chains are shaky. Freeze-dries fade, refrigeration fails. But jars, properly boil-tested jars, unlike apps or generators, they don't fail. A seal done right carted meals when times cracked. Grandma's survival hinged on knowing if her jars were really sealed. The invisible threat? A slow leak you don't notice. Mold growing at the seams. A sour stink that starts when food's food and then it's lost. Sealing isn't just twisting a lid, it's securing fate, it's securing flavor, it's securing life. So next time you process a batch, don't just listen for the click. Watch the boil, wait for the pop, and truly test the seal. Because when collapse comes knocking, only airtight memories will keep your pantry intact. Number 7. Wax seal over fruit jams. You think a lid is enough, that once you twist it shut, the job is done. But Grandma knew better, especially when it came to fruit jams. Because sugar ferments, mold spreads, and in a collapse, one bad jar can mean an entire batch ruined. So she sealed it with wax. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't pretty, but it worked. A layer of melted paraffin, clear, solid, almost invisible, poured gently over the jam once it cooled. Not boiling hot, just warm enough to spread and settle. It clung to the glass, hardened with silence, and became an airtight shield between fruit and oxygen. Why wax? Because even a properly sealed lid can fail over time. Metal rusts, rubber warps, but wax doesn't blink, it holds. It protects. It seals the sweetness inside like a time capsule, one you could open months, even years later. And here's the key. It wasn't just about taste. It was about trust. You didn't second-guess a wax-sealed jam. You knew it was safe. You knew it was ready. You knew it would last. Invisible danger? It's not just air creeping in. It's the silence of spoilage. That faint hiss when you lift the lid and something smells off. The mold you didn't see until it bloomed. The sugar turned sour. And when that's all you had left, one jar, one winter, one chance, you couldn't afford to lose it. So Grandma poured the wax, let it settle, checked for cracks. And only then did she store it deep in the pantry. That seal? It wasn't just tradition, it was survival. So if you ever make your own preserves, don't just trust the lid, melt the wax. Pour it clean. Let it shield your work, because one layer of paraffin can be the difference between a wasted effort and a winter saved. And if your grandma ever showed you something this clever, share it below. Because that memory? It might just help someone else seal their future too. Number 6. Cold air cooling. You just finished boiling your jars. The hiss of steam has died. You want to pull them out, rush the process, and get shelves stocked now. But your grandmother's wisdom whispers, chill, let them just sit. She didn't rush the cooling. She let those hot jars rest undisturbed, in still air for hours. In silence, because she knew something that modern panic ignores. Here's what she practiced. After processing, she'd lift the canner off heat, remove the lid, and wait 5 long sacred minutes. Then she'd gently remove the jars, place them upright on clean towels or a wire rack away from drafts, away from noise or disruption, giving them space to breathe. Those jars didn't need more heat. They needed time. The payoff? A stronger seal, a safer preserve, and a slow fade in temperature that continued to kill bacteria long after the boiling water dimmed. Scientists confirm it. During the slow cooling phase, much of the sterilizing happens right there. That's when jars truly seal, and when they continue killing bacteria that process them safely, like work from Healthy Canning and the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Now imagine your modern pantry, sleek lids, speedy air, cooling, impatience. A seal that pops once, then fails on the shelf 3 weeks later. Mold creeps in. Your food bedding becomes poison rather than provision. But jars cooled by time, they stayed sealed. The lids concave. The contents rest in still calm. That slow drag of heat ensures safety. That pause ensures survival. Grandma didn't chase heat. She trusted time and cooling to do their work. So next time you can, don't force cool. Don't fan them or chase seals. Step back. Let those jars stand in quiet stillness. Let the seal settle before the silence sets in. Because forget the pop. Watch the drop. And know your goods will actually keep. If your grandmother ever insisted you, just wait with your canning, even when everything screamed, hurry, drop, patience preserves in the comments, that memory might just stop someone from losing food, or worse. Number 5. Grease-lined lids for acidic foods. You think a screw-top lid is enough to seal in your salsa or pickles. But Grandma knew better. Especially when it came to anything acidic, tomatoes, vinegar, or lemon zest. That threat wasn't just spoilage. It was rusty. That's where the grease layer came in. Not fancy, not expensive. Just a thin smear of leftover bacon drippings, lard, or butter brushed over the rim before screwing the lid tight. Here's why it worked. The acid in your preserves attacks metal. It corrodes. It weakens the seal. But with a thin grease layer, that acid hits fat, not metal, and slides right off. That metal stays protected. The seal stays sound. And your jar, your food is safe. Grandma didn't think of it as clever. She thought of it as necessary. She didn't have fancy sterilizers or vacuum lids, but she had scraps of fat and wisdom passed through winters where mold meant hunger. And mold doesn't respect labels, dates, or your carefully numbered canner chart. The grease doesn't just protect, it enhances. It keeps the rims shiny. It keeps seals tight. And when you pop that lid months later, you hear a firm thunk, not a hiss of betrayal. The invisible danger? Spoilage doesn't announce itself. You won't taste it until your first bite sours. You won't see mold until you open the jar. You won't smell rot until it's spread. But a single layer of fat shields you from all of that. During power outages and kitchen damage in hurricane-ravaged towns, jars with greasy rims stayed clean while others failed. That grease meant someone else ate safely. No sickness. No waste. Because something so simple blocked a cascade of failure. So next time you're preserving acidic food, don't skip the grease. Rub the rim, screw, process, patience, and then store it right. Because in collapse, nothing fancy protects like a touch of fat. If your grandma ever taught you this grease trick, drop Granny's grease in the comments. Her insight might keep someone's pantry safe when nothing else can. Number 4. Reusing pickling brine. You open a jar of pickles. Crunchy, tangy, perfect. But once they're gone, what happens to that brine? Most people dump it down the sink without a second thought. But Grandma? She treated it like gold. Because that leftover brine, it wasn't a waste. It was an opportunity. a living liquid still full of flavor, salt, vinegar, and potential. Here's how she used it. Reusing pickling brine was never a lazy shortcut. It was smart preservation. She'd take the brine from a finished jar cucumbers, okra, green beans, strain it, boil it for safety, then pour it over new veggies, not just to add flavor, but to restart the process, to extend the life of every drop. And in the right hands, that brine could be used 2, sometimes even 3 times with the right tweaks. Sometimes she'd add a splash of fresh vinegar, a pinch of salt, a garlic clove or 2, but never from scratch, because waste wasn't an option, especially not in a world where grocery trips weren't guaranteed. And the invisible threat? It's not just spoilage. It's complacency. You won't feel the impact of throwing out useful brine until the vinegar shelves go empty. You won't see the value of those cloudy leftovers until you have nothing else to preserve with. Modern testing backs it up. Reused brine, if reboiled and slightly rebalanced, can safely preserve hard vegetables like carrots, beets, and even onions. And the best part? It's already seasoned. That flavor's been aging, developing, deepening for weeks. During shortages, this one habit meant Grandma's cellar stayed stocked when her neighbors ran dry. So if your jar's empty, think twice. Don't toss the brine. Use it, reheat, refresh, refill. Because Grandma didn't just preserve food, she preserved possibility. If your Nani or Dottie ever poured warm brine over a second round of vegetables, tell us below. That old jar might have held more than pickles. It might have held the mindset that'll carry us through the next crisis. Number 3, sunlight jar test. You think checking a jar by sound or sight is enough? A click? A shine? That's modern or fragile confidence. Grandma knew something deeper. She tested jars with sunlight. Before storing her preserves deep in pantries and root cellars, she'd hold each one up to the sunday. Why? Because light reveals truth. Shadows show clarity or cloudiness. Tiny bubbles in sunlight exposed trapped air that waits to spoil. See-through jars weren't safe. She sought full transparency. Here's how she did it. After the seal popped and the lid sucked tight, she brought each jar outside on a paneled porch. She rotated it slowly under low morning light. The sunlight would illuminate any remaining microcavities or worse, hidden mold forming at the top. If she saw a speck of haze or a suspended droplet, that jar went back into the canner. Sometimes she'd reheat, reseal, or re-clean the rim, but she never compromised. Because when the freezer fails, the store closes, and power is gone, that seal becomes your food lifeline. One bad jar can spoil an entire shelf waste that hits harder when options vanish. Invisible threat? You won't smell rot. You won't instantly taste decay. But a cloudy layer or tunnel of air becomes a silent assassin in the dark, and light exposes it before disaster does. In modern tests, jars exposed to fluorescent or dim light hidden spoilage in just hours. But sunlight? It reveals every flaw, even concentrations of sugar giving off early fermentation signs. It's nature's scanner. That's why Grandma never trusted indoor light. She trusted the sunday, and when days were short, she still made time because that test meant safety, not risk. So next time you finish canning, bring those jars outside, spin them in sunlight. Let the warmth reveal their honesty. Because preservation isn't just about sealing in food, it's about sealing out darkness before it breaks you. If your own grandma ever held up a jar to the light to prove it was safe, drop sunlight check in the comments. That one habit might just preserve someone's life when the power fades. Number 2, double jelly layer. You finish the last tangy bite of pickled vegetables and stare at the jar empty, right? But Grandma didn't toss that golden brine. Not in a world where every drop matters. Here's what she really did. She'd strain that leftover brine through a cloth or strainer, catching stray seeds and debris, then bring it back to a gentle simmer. Sometimes she'd add fresh vinegar, a knob of salt, or even a garlic clove. Not fancy, it was purposeful. Then, while fresh veggies waited, she'd pour in the still warm brine and seal it up again. This wasn't laziness. This was smart, resourceful preservation, especially when supplies ran low or market trips were rare. Because here's the thing. Vinegar, salt, and natural spices don't lose their power just because the jar is empty. In fact, that aged brine often carried richer flavor, layered, mellowed, and efficient. With a single hot boil, it sterilized. With a simple tweak, it refreshed. And with one fresh seal, it could pickle again. The invisible danger? Most people assume brine can only be used once. They pour that amber tang down the drain and call it waste. But when grocery shelves sag or wartime rations return, that brine becomes a lifeline. That liquid becomes the difference between jars on the shelf or empty dishes. In crisis, shelters after disasters, families who reused brine safely stretched food supplies further. Twice as many canned jars with half the resources. No waste, no spoilage, just smart use of what's already in your home. So next time you empty a jar, stop and think. The real work hasn't ended. The brine isn't done yet. Strain it, simmer it, refresh and reuse. Let it seal life into new produce one more time. Because Grandma didn't preserve out of panic. She preserved with purpose. If your grandma ever showed you the art of reusing that same brine, tell us with a quick brine wise in the comments. Because that one memory might be what keeps someone's kitchen alive when everything else is gone. Number 1, lid grease guard. You finish canning your jars, tangy tomatoes, zesty pickles, sweet preserves. You seal them tight, the click is satisfying, but it's not enough. Grandma knew it, and so should you. Because when it comes to acidic foods, your seals are under siege. Vinegar eats at metal rims, acids seep in, rust forms, seals fail, spoilage sets in. In a world where fresh food may vanish overnight, that's not just inconvenient, that's dangerous. So Grandma used something that sounds too simple to save the day. She'd take a clean rag and dab a thin line of leftover lard, bacon grease, or even butter around the jar rim, just enough to coat the metal without dripping inside. Once the jar is processed and sealed, that grease layer stays, invisible and protective. Here's why that matters. As the jar cools, the metal shrinks. That grease stays lubricated. It keeps acid from touching the rim acid that would otherwise pit the seal and invite spoilage. It's a sacrificial buffer that preserves steam power, seal integrity, and the entire batch. Now imagine the collapse scenario. Shelves empty, heat gone. Food becomes a fortress you have to maintain. A single jar of jam, one successful seal, one starved pantry saved, but a cracked lid, corrosion, lost meals. Invisible danger? You won't hear a tinny hiss. You won't see the rust beginning until the preserve leaks, mold blooms, and your only food stands gone bad. That swipe of grease? It's not waste. It's a tiny act of kitchen engineering. It's your preservation backbone. During food shortages in rural winters, families practicing grease layer sealing had shelves of safe canned goods long after others had spoiled jars. That grease, fuel by memory and necessity, sustained them. So next time after canning your acidic jars, don't just seal them. Buttery shield that rim. Protect your food from unseen rust, decay, and disappointment. Because Grandma didn't just save tomatoes, she saved hope. If your grandmother ever taught you this grease trick, drop grease shield in the comments below. That one kitchen rule might just guard someone's pantry when times get tough. You've just seen the kind of wisdom that doesn't come from books. It comes from survival, from hands that stitched, stirred, stored, and saved long before apps, hacks, or tutorials. And if you're still watching, then deep down, you already know, this world isn't getting easier, it's getting leaner, tighter, more fragile. So the question isn't, will things go wrong? The question is, will you be ready when they do? Because when the shelves go empty, when the power fades, when comfort becomes a luxury and food becomes a fight, it won't be your gadgets that save you. It'll be the skills you remembered, the lessons you preserved, the habits your grandmother called just life. If even one trick in this video sparked a memory, made you think of your nana, your dadi, your mom stirring pots or sealing jars, then do something right now that costs nothing but could mean everything. Subscribe. This channel isn't for the doomers. It's for the doers. For the ones who prepare before it's too late. For the ones who carry wisdom forward not just for themselves, but for their families, their communities, and the ones who will come after. So hit that button, because we're just getting started. And trust me, you'll want to be ready for what's coming next.